Let me hit you with something uncomfortable right now. Toxic people don't pick you by accident. They choose you because they sense an opening. And once you understand what they're actually feeding on, you'll see that you don't need to fight them. You just need to starve them. If this feels real to you right now, take a moment and like this video. Not for me, but to remind yourself that your peace matters. When you stop reacting emotionally, you immediately remove the reward system that toxic people rely on because their whole plan is designed to pull energy out of you through irritation, guilt, anger, or confusion. And the second those reactions vanish, their influence falls apart. Emotional reactions tell them they still have control, that they can still affect you, that their words or actions hold power inside your nervous system. Silence, calmness, and neutral reactions do the opposite. They create psychological friction. Suddenly, their insults feel meaningless. Their provocations fail. Their manipulations have nowhere to land. This doesn't mean becoming cold or robotic. It means learning to pause before responding, taking a breath before speaking, and choosing restraint over impulse. Most people assume strength looks loud, but real strength looks boring. It looks like delayed answers. It looks like steady eye contact without explanation. It looks like walking away from conversations that aren't worth your energy. When you stop reacting emotionally, you also stop giving free information. Every emotional outburst shows something about your fears, your insecurities, your weak spots. Toxic people collect that information. They study it, and then they use it. Calm behavior starves them of intelligence. Over time, they stop testing because there's no feedback. You become unpredictable in the best sense, not chaotic, but in control. And control is frightening to anyone who survives by pushing buttons. This change also rewires how you see yourself. Instead of feeling hijacked by others' actions, you begin to feel like the authority in your own body. You understand that you don't owe instant reactions. You don't owe explanations. You don't owe emotional labor to people who disrespect you. That internal power quietly changes your posture, your tone, and your presence. Others notice it. Respect grows without you demanding it. Toxic personalities naturally drift away because they sense when someone is no longer emotionally reachable. They don't leave because you confronted them. They leave because the door is closed. You become mentally unavailable to drama, emotionally unavailable to manipulation, and energetically unavailable to chaos. That's when targeting stops. Not with force, not with arguments, but through self-control, consistency, and the discipline to protect your peace even when your ego wants to react. When you enforce quiet, steady boundaries without explaining yourself, you step into a kind of authority that toxic people don't know how to handle because they thrive on negotiation, emotional bargaining, and making you justify your choices. Most people announce boundaries with speeches. They argue, they defend, they try to sound reasonable. And that's exactly where power leaks out. A real boundary isn't a debate, it's behavior. It's what you allow, what you stop responding to, and what you calmly walk away from. You don't need to tell someone 3 times how to treat you. You show them once by changing your availability. You reply slower. You stop participating in disrespectful conversations. You leave situations that feel off. You don't chase people who pull away. You don't explain why you need space. Silence becomes your enforcement tool. Consistency becomes your language. Toxic people hate this because they can't argue with actions. They can twist words. They can manipulate feelings, but they cannot negotiate with absence. When you stop explaining, you take away their ability to poke holes in your logic. When you stay consistent, you remove their hope that you'll eventually cave. And that's what breaks the cycle. Most people fail here because they feel guilty. They think boundaries make them rude. They worry about being misunderstood. But boundaries aren't about being liked, they're about being respected. Every time you let something drain you, you teach people where the line is. Every time you enforce your limits quietly, you retrain their expectations. No drama, no threats, just calm follow through. You don't announce that you're done being disrespected. You simply stop participating. Over time, something powerful happens. Your nervous system relaxes. You stop expecting chaos. You become grounded, and that internal stability radiates outward. People feel it. Your presence changes. Toxic personalities lose interest because they can no longer push you into over-explaining or emotional reactions. They move on to easier targets. Quiet boundaries also teach you self-respect in real time. You start trusting yourself. You realize you don't need permission to protect your peace. You don't need closure from people who crossed you. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You just move differently, and that difference is felt immediately. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, steadily, and permanently. When you become predictable in strength instead of predictable in weakness, toxic people lose their leverage because they can no longer catch you slipping emotionally or mentally. Weakness isn't crying or struggling. Weakness is inconsistency. It's reacting sometimes and staying calm other times. It's setting boundaries today and breaking them tomorrow. It's standing up for yourself once, then shrinking the next. That inconsistency teaches people that they just have to wait you out. But when your strength becomes predictable, something shifts. You respond the same way every time: calm, grounded, direct. You don't explode one day and stay silent the next. You don't tolerate disrespect when you're tired and reject it when you're energized. Your behavior becomes steady, and that steadiness sends a clear signal. This person isn't situationally strong, they are structurally strong. Toxic people test patterns. They watch for emotional openings. They look for moments of fatigue, loneliness, or self-doubt. But when they see the same composed version of you, regardless of mood or circumstance, they realize there's nothing to exploit. Predictable strength means your standards don't change with your feelings. It means you don't beg for respect on bad days or overextend yourself on good days. You show up as the same person in every room. You don't explain yourself differently depending on who you're talking to. You don't soften your boundaries because someone is charming. That reliability makes you psychologically unshakable. And here's what most people don't understand. Consistency creates safety inside you. When you know how you will respond before a situation even happens, anxiety drops. You no longer brace for chaos. You trust yourself to handle whatever comes. That inner certainty changes your posture, your voice, your pace. You walk slower, you speak less, you listen more. People feel that energy immediately. Toxic personalities hate predictable strength because it removes hope. They can't wait for you to break. They can't provoke emotional swings. They can't push until you fall. You become boring to them, and boring is powerful over time. They redirect their attention elsewhere toward people who still negotiate their worth through reactions. And the deeper transformation happens inside you. You stop performing confidence and start living it. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to dominate conversations. You simply remain solid. Predictable strength means you no longer rise and fall based on how others treat you. You become self-governed, and once you reach that point, targeting ends naturally because there is nothing left for them to take. When you remove access to your time, attention, and energy, you cut off the supply that toxic people live on because attention is their currency and access is their power. Most people think toxicity survives on conflict, but it actually survives on availability. As long as you keep answering immediately, showing up when you're drained, listening to complaints you didn't cause, or staying in conversations that feel heavy, you're quietly telling them you're still open for business. The shift happens when you start protecting your bandwidth like it matters. You stop picking up every call. You stop replying to messages that don't need urgency. You stop being the emotional dumping ground. You stop rearranging your schedule for people who wouldn't do the same for you. This isn't selfish, it's strategic. Your time is limited, your energy is precious. And once you realize that, you become selective. You start asking yourself before every interaction, does this add to my life or take from it? That question alone changes everything. Toxic people hate scarcity. They thrive on unlimited access. They need you reachable, responsive, and emotionally available. When you become harder to reach, harder to provoke, and harder to drain, they feel it immediately. You don't announce it. You don't explain it. You simply become less accessible. You leave earlier. You engage less. You redirect conversations. You prioritize your goals over their drama. And something powerful happens inside you. At the same time, your nervous system calms. You stop living in reaction mode. You start moving intentionally. Instead of waking up exhausted, you wake up focused. Instead of carrying others' moods, you carry your own direction. This also teaches people how to treat you without saying a word. When you stop overgiving, people either rise to meet your standards or fade away. And that's exactly what you want, because anyone who only values you when you're available to be drained was never truly on your side. Removing access doesn't require confrontation. It requires discipline. It requires saying no without guilt. It requires choosing solitude over chaos sometimes. It requires understanding that being constantly available isn't kindness. It's self-abandonment. As you pull your energy back into your life, your confidence grows quietly. Your presence changes. You become centered. Toxic personalities sense that shift and naturally disengage because they can no longer feed. You don't need to push them away. You just stop supplying them. And once the supply ends, so does the targeting. When you stop oversharing your struggles, you take away one of the most powerful tools toxic people use against you. Because vulnerability in the wrong environment becomes ammunition. Most people think opening up automatically creates connection, but with the wrong audience, it creates leverage. Every detail you casually reveal about your fears, past, insecurities, or present, stress turns into information. Toxic personalities don't listen with understanding. They listen for patterns. They record what hurts you. They remember what makes you doubt yourself. And later, whether subtly or directly, they exploit it. Oversharing teaches people where your vulnerabilities are. It shows them what to trigger when they want a reaction. The change begins when you start practicing quiet strength. You don't lie. You don't become cold. You simply become selective. You stop explaining your fatigue, you stop narrating your recovery, you stop giving detailed updates on your struggles, you let people witness outcomes, not wounds. This builds a strong psychological boundary. Suddenly, there's less for anyone to manipulate. Your inner life becomes private space, and privacy is protection. When you heal silently, you also rebuild self-trust. Instead of seeking approval through sharing, you learn to handle emotions internally or with those who have shown reliability over time. That transforms your confidence. You start standing taller, you stop needing reassurance from unstable people. Your energy becomes focused instead of scattered. Toxic individuals feel that immediately. They notice when someone no longer displays weakness. They sense when conversations remain on the surface. They become frustrated when they can't reach your inner world, and frustration leads them to disengage. This doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means choosing carefully. Not everyone deserves to know your story. Not everyone earns access to your growth. Silence becomes part of your discipline. You realize strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce pain. It doesn't beg for recognition. It moves forward quietly. As you stop oversharing, your emotional boundaries strengthen. You become harder to read, harder to provoke, harder to destabilize. Your presence shifts from reactive to steady, and the most crucial change happens inside you. You stop outsourcing your recovery. You stop giving pieces of yourself away hoping to be noticed. You start holding yourself with respect. Toxic people lose interest because they can't extract emotional material anymore. There's nothing to twist, nothing to replay, nothing to weaponize. You become internally solid. When your inner world is protected, your outer world grows peaceful because attacks only work when something is exposed. When you radiate calm confidence instead of defensiveness, you flip the entire power balance because toxic people feed on insecurity, not strength. Defensiveness signals doubt. It tells them you are unsure, that their words landed, that they still hold emotional access. Calm confidence does the opposite. It communicates steadiness without needing justification. You don't rush to explain. You don't scramble to prove your intentions. You don't raise your voice to be heard. You simply stand grounded in your truth. This isn't arrogance. It's quiet certainty. It shows in your posture, your pace, your eye contact, and your tone. You speak slower, you choose words thoughtfully, you don't fill silence out of discomfort, you allow pauses. That composure creates psychological pressure because now they don't know how to unsettle you. Most people get defensive when challenged. They start justifying themselves. They overtalk. They try to persuade. In doing that, they surrender control. Calm confidence keeps control with you. You respond, not react. You acknowledge without agreeing. You listen without absorbing. That steadiness unsettles anyone who relies on emotional chaos. Toxic personalities crave spikes, anger, guilt, fear, embarrassment. When they can't create those spikes, their tactics fail. Your calm becomes a mirror, forcing them to confront their own instability. That's why they either escalate briefly or disappear. Either way, they lose interest. This also changes how you feel inside. You stop bracing for conflict. You stop rehearsing arguments in your head. You trust yourself to handle situations in real time. That trust brings presence. Presence brings authority. People begin treating you differently without your asking. You're no longer seen as someone easily rattled. You become someone who holds space instead of losing it. Calm confidence also teaches emotional discipline. You realize you don't need to defend yourself to people determined to misunderstand you. You don't need approval from those who don't respect you. You don't need to explain your growth. You let your consistency speak. Over time, this becomes natural. You enter rooms centered. You leave conversations unbothered. You stop carrying other people's moods. Toxic people sense this shift immediately. They feel the wall, they feel the distance, they feel the lack of emotional return, and because there's nothing to provoke, they move on. Calm confidence makes you energetically unavailable to drama. It makes you unshakable in situations that used to drain you, and that's when targeting ends. Not because you fought harder, but because you became solid enough that their chaos can no longer reach you. When you raise your standards for how people treat you, you create a filter that automatically repels toxic behavior because you no longer accept disrespect, manipulation, or disregard in any form. Most people live without clear standards, and that's why toxic personalities find them easy targets. They can bend them, exploit them, and repeatedly cross lines without consequence. Raising your standards doesn't mean being harsh or cold. It means defining what you will and won't accept and enforcing it consistently, even when it's uncomfortable. You start noticing behavior patterns, not just isolated acts. You recognize gossip, backhanded compliments, entitlement, and manipulation as signs to step back or disengage. You stop rationalizing bad behavior or making excuses for people who repeatedly cross boundaries. This is about self-respect, not revenge. When you uphold clear standards, your presence signals that mistreatment has a cost, simply removing yourself from the situation. Toxic individuals are highly aware of these costs. They have no patience for people who won't tolerate chaos, who won't give emotional or social loopholes, and who won't bend under pressure. Over time, their attempts to provoke, belittle, or control fail because your boundaries are firm. Standards also strengthen internal alignment. You no longer compromise peace for temporary approval. You begin to prioritize relationships and spaces that align with your values and support growth. That inner clarity radiates outward, creating a magnetic confidence others notice instinctively. Toxic people feel it as subtle resistance, an invisible barrier blocking access. They test, probe, and eventually move on because they cannot exploit you without consequence. Raising your standards doesn't just block toxicity outside, it changes how you see yourself inside. You develop sharper judgment, stronger discernment, and the courage to act on what's right for you. The moment your standards become non-negotiable, toxic targeting stops. It's not about confrontation or retaliation. It's about clearly establishing your value and living consistently within it, leaving no room for anyone who wishes to diminish, manipulate, or drain you. This is how self-respect becomes the ultimate shield. When your focus is fully on growth, toxic people become irrelevant. You remove yourself from their orbit because your energy, attention, and ambition are no longer available for their games, and they sense it immediately. Toxic individuals thrive on distraction. They want to hijack your thoughts, drag you into arguments, and redirect your energy toward their chaos instead of your goals. The moment you commit to self-improvement, discipline, and personal success, you no longer give that leverage. You don't argue over petty disputes. You don't justify your choices. You don't seek validation from those who want to drain you. Your life centers on progress, not reaction. That shift alone disarms anyone who survives on drama. Focusing on growth doesn't mean ignoring social dynamics. It means prioritizing your path over temporary conflict. You invest your time building skills, habits, empowering relationships, and projects that move you forward rather than worrying about manipulation or criticism. This forms an invisible shield. Your energy is fully engaged, your mindset is aligned, and your presence moves forward instead of reacting. Toxic people sense when someone's energy is unavailable. They feel that focus as an unbreakable boundary.